Today, we're going to uncover a truth that's been hidden in plain sight for 2,000 years. This isn't another sermon telling you to pray harder, believe stronger, or wait patiently for God to finally notice you. What you're about to discover might surprise you because it completely contradicts what you've heard from every pulpit, every Sunday school lesson, and every religious authority figure in your life. Have you ever wondered why your most desperate prayers seem to go unanswered while Jesus promised that you would do even greater works than he did? What if everything you've been taught about following Jesus has been carefully designed to keep you powerless, dependent, and forever seeking something that's already within your grasp right now? Here's the uncomfortable reality that most churches won't tell you. Jesus never intended to create a religion of worship around himself. He wasn't building a system where you'd spend your entire life begging an unreachable divine figure for scraps of mercy. Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to share will fundamentally shift how you understand everything Jesus actually taught versus what you've been told he taught. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Think about this for a moment. Every time you've prayed for a miracle, what position were you in? You were likely on your knees, feeling small, confessing your unworthiness, listing your failures, and desperately pleading for God to intervene in your circumstances. Has this ever happened to you? You pray with everything you have, follow every instruction perfectly, yet the breakthrough you need remains frustratingly out of reach, as if there's an invisible wall between you and the divine power you're seeking. What if I told you that this entire approach is the exact opposite of what Jesus was demonstrating? When he said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you," he wasn't speaking metaphorically. When he promised, "You will do greater works than these," he wasn't exaggerating or speaking only to his disciples. He was revealing something revolutionary, that the Christ consciousness he embodied isn't exclusive, isn't distant, and isn't reserved for one perfect human being who lived 2 millennia ago. Jesus came to show you what's possible when a human being recognizes their true spiritual nature. He wasn't saying, "Worship me because I'm special and you're not." He was saying, "Follow me, learn what I've learned, access what I'm accessing, become what I'm demonstrating." But somewhere along the way, that message got twisted into a system that keeps you small, keeps you begging, and keeps you believing you're forever separated from the divine power that Jesus said lives within you. The difference between praying to Jesus and praying from Christ consciousness is the difference between remaining powerless and stepping into the same spiritual authority Jesus himself operated from. And what's about to unfold in this video will show you exactly how. Let's talk about what really happens inside your mind every single time you pray. You've been conditioned, trained from childhood to approach the divine from a position of absolute powerlessness. You start by rehearsing everything wrong with you. You catalog your mistakes, your failures, your unworthiness. You remind God, as if he needs reminding, of how broken and incomplete you are. Then, from that place of total lack, you beg for intervention. You plead for mercy. You promise to be better if only this one prayer gets answered. This is what I call beggar consciousness, and it's been embedded into your spiritual DNA through years of religious programming. Every prayer service, every altar call, every confession booth has reinforced this same message. You are separate from God, you are unworthy, you are powerless, and your only hope is that an external force might show you mercy if you grovel convincingly enough. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything about this journey of spiritual transformation. When Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you," he wasn't delivering a beautiful metaphor for Sunday morning inspiration. He was revealing the fundamental mechanics of how Spiritual reality actually operates. The kingdom isn't somewhere else. It isn't locked behind pearly gates waiting for you after death. It isn't controlled by religious authorities who hold the keys to your salvation. It's within you right now, in this very moment. Think about the profound impact of what this actually means. Christ consciousness, the state of awareness where miracles flow naturally, isn't something Jesus possessed exclusively because he was special and you're not. It's your birthright, your true nature, the essence of who you actually are beneath all the conditioning and religious programming that's been layered on top of it. Every time you pray from that beggar mindset, you're making a declaration to the universe about who you believe yourself to be. You're affirming that you're incomplete, that you're broken, that you're separate from divine supply. And here's where it gets really interesting. Consciousness, being the creative force that it is, immediately goes to work manifesting more evidence of exactly what you're declaring. You pray for abundance while declaring you're in lack. You pray for healing while affirming you're diseased and powerless. You pray for breakthrough while reinforcing the very walls that keep you trapped. This isn't about positive thinking or pretending problems don't exist. This is about understanding that the miracles you've been seeking outside yourself have always been within, waiting for you to recognize them. The transformation doesn't happen through more intense begging or more fervent petition. It happens through a complete shift in consciousness, a fundamental change in how you understand your relationship with the divine. Now, I want to go even deeper into this revelation, because what most people don't realize is that this beggar consciousness doesn't just affect your prayer life. It shapes your entire reality, every decision you make, every relationship you enter, every opportunity you see or miss. The consciousness you hold becomes the lens through which you experience everything. Write in the comments, "My consciousness is shifting," if this is beginning to reshape how you see your spiritual journey. So what does real prayer actually look like when you strip away all the religious theater and get down to the raw spiritual mechanics? It's not about asking at all. True prayer is recognition. It's aligning your awareness with what already exists in spiritual reality, not begging for something to come into existence. Let me make this practical for you, because this mindset shift is where the real transformation happens. When you're facing a health crisis, traditional religion teaches you to catalog every symptom to God, describe how much pain you're in, explain how desperate your situation is, and then beg for healing. But every word of that petition is actually reinforcing the problem. You're giving power to the disease. You're declaring it as real and threatening. You're affirming your powerlessness in the face of it. If you want to continue exploring these hidden truths that actually transform your life, hit that subscribe button. There's so much more here that will shift how you experience reality. The practice Jesus was actually demonstrating is radically different. Instead of begging God to fix what appears broken, you recognize that in the realm of pure consciousness, in spiritual reality, where everything originates, there is only wholeness and perfection. Disease doesn't exist there, lack doesn't exist there, limitation doesn't exist there. As you hold that recognition, as you rest in that awareness without fighting the appearance or fearing it, something extraordinary begins to happen. The body starts reflecting the consciousness you're holding, because physical form always follows consciousness. This is spiritual law, not religious hope. This is the hidden truth that religious institutions have worked tirelessly to keep buried. Because once you understand it, you don't need them anymore. You don't need intermediaries. You don't need special rituals or approved prayers or ordained authorities to grant you access to the divine. You have direct access right now, in this moment, through your own consciousness. And this brings us to something crucial about how Jesus positioned himself in relation to you. He never said, "Worship me and stay small." Those weren't his words or his intention. What he actually said was, "Follow me." Think about the massive difference between those two approaches. Worship keeps you at a distance, looking up at someone infinitely above you, hoping they'll notice you. Follow means come with me, learn what I'm learning, do what I'm doing, access what I'm accessing. Jesus was demonstrating a spiritual technology that every human being has access to. When he promised, "You will do greater works than these," he meant it literally, not as some impossible exaggeration. He was showing you the blueprint for how consciousness operates, how miracles manifest, how divine power flows through a human being who understands their true nature. This transformation from worshipper to practitioner is exactly what threatens institutional control. Because awakened people don't need permission to access the divine. The journey from powerless beggar to empowered spiritual being isn't about achieving some special status or becoming holier than others. It's about recognizing what's already true, what's always been true about who you actually are beneath all the religious programming. Every decision you make about whether to beg or recognize, whether to worship from a distance or follow into the same consciousness, shapes the reality you experience. What happens when you actually begin practicing this recognition instead of petition? When you start following Jesus' example instead of just worshipping his image? The impact on your daily life, your relationships, your health, your sense of purpose becomes undeniable. But there's something even deeper happening behind the scenes that most people never discover, and it has to do with how consciousness itself operates as the creative force in your life. Drop a comment saying, "I choose recognition," if this distinction between petition and recognition is clicking for you. Let me tell you something about the cross that will completely shift your understanding of what Jesus was actually demonstrating. Everything you've been taught about why Jesus died has been carefully constructed to keep you trapped in perpetual guilt and dependency. The traditional story goes like this. God was so furiously angry about humanity's sin that he required a blood sacrifice, and Jesus took the punishment you deserved so you could escape divine wrath. That narrative turns God into a vengeful tyrant and you into a condemned criminal who can only survive through someone else's suffering. But that's not what the cross demonstrates at all. Jesus wasn't appeasing an angry deity or paying off some cosmic debt. He was proving something far more profound about the nature of consciousness itself. He went through humanity's ultimate fear, physical death, and emerged on the other side to show you that your true identity is indestructible. You are not this temporary body that experiences pain, aging, and eventual dissolution. You are eternal consciousness having a temporary human experience. This revelation changes everything about how you understand suffering, challenges, and what you perceive as problems in your life. When difficulties arise, you're not being punished by a judgmental God testing your worthiness or paying you back for past mistakes. That entire framework keeps you imprisoned in fear and powerlessness. What's actually happening is something much more mechanical, much more predictable, and ultimately much more empowering. You're experiencing the external manifestation of whatever consciousness you've been holding. This is where the real transformation in your mindset begins, because once you grasp this spiritual law, you realize that changing your external circumstances isn't about manipulating the physical world or convincing God to intervene. It's about shifting the consciousness that's creating those circumstances in the first place. Think of it like this. Consciousness operates with the same consistency as gravity. When you hold an object and release it, you don't have to convince gravity to work or pray that the object falls. It falls because that's how physical law operates. In the same way, whatever you hold in consciousness must manifest in your external experience because that's how spiritual law operates. The external world has no choice but to reflect your internal state. This means that every persistent problem in your life, every pattern that keeps repeating, every limitation you keep encountering isn't evidence of God's disapproval or proof that you're cursed or unlucky. It's feedback showing you what consciousness you've been operating from. The journey toward transformation isn't about fixing what's outside. It's about recognizing and shifting what's inside, because the outside is simply the projection of the inside. Most people spend their entire lives trying to rearrange external circumstances while keeping the same internal consciousness that created those circumstances. They pray for financial breakthrough while maintaining poverty consciousness. They beg for healed relationships while holding resentment consciousness. They petition for opportunities while reinforcing victim consciousness. And then they wonder why nothing fundamentally changes, why the same patterns keep emerging in different forms. The hidden truth behind every spiritual teaching, the revelation that changes the entire game, is understanding that consciousness is the creative force. Not your actions, not your circumstances, not external conditions, but the consciousness you hold. This is what Jesus was demonstrating through every miracle, every teaching, every interaction. He was showing you how reality responds to consciousness, how form follows awareness, how your experience of life shifts when your internal state shifts. Right consciousness creates, if this principle is beginning to reshape how you understand the challenges you've been facing. Let me share a real story that demonstrates exactly how this shift from petition to recognition works when you're facing an impossible situation. There was a woman named Margaret who received a terminal diagnosis that doctors labeled incurable. She did everything traditional religion teaches. She attended healing services, had church elders lay hands on her, fasted for days, confessed every sin she could remember, and spent countless hours on her knees begging Jesus to intervene and fix what was happening in her body. Month after month, nothing changed. Her condition continued deteriorating. The despair was overwhelming because she'd followed every instruction perfectly, prayed with absolute sincerity, believed with everything she had. Yet the miracle remained frustratingly out of reach. She was exhausted from the journey, depleted from the constant battle, ready to give up entirely. Then something shifted in her understanding. She stopped cataloging her symptoms to God. She stopped describing how much pain she was in. She stopped begging for intervention. Instead, she began practicing something completely different. Every morning, she would sit in silence and recognize one simple truth. In spirit, there is no disease. She wasn't denying the physical symptoms or pretending they didn't exist. She was making a profound decision about what she would give ultimate authority to in her consciousness. The transformation didn't happen overnight like some charismatic miracle story. It unfolded gradually as her internal state shifted. First, the fear dissolved. Then the mental anguish began to lessen. Within 2 months, her doctors were completely baffled to find no trace of what they had confidently declared incurable. But here's what's crucial to understand about what actually happened. Margaret didn't get healed in the traditional sense of an external force fixing her broken body. She recognized that she'd never been separate from wholeness. The body simply reflected the change in consciousness. This is the practice of presence that changes everything, and it's the exact opposite of what you've been taught prayer should look like. Traditional prayer is you talking at God, presenting your wish list of needs and desires, explaining your problems in elaborate detail, and hoping someone out there is listening and cares enough to respond. You're having a one-sided conversation with a deity you imagine is somewhere far away, separate from you, occasionally intervening if you say the right words or demonstrate enough faith. If this video opened something in your awareness, hit that like button. It helps this message reach others who are ready for it. But real spiritual practice flips that entire approach. It's about becoming silent enough to listen. It's about recognizing that the presence you've been desperately seeking outside yourself is actually the essence of who you are. This isn't some abstract theological concept or poetic metaphor. This is the practical mechanics of how consciousness operates and how transformation actually happens. When you truly grasp that, Christ consciousness isn't something Jesus possessed exclusively 2,000 years ago, but is actually your consciousness right now. Everything about your spiritual journey shifts. You stop asking for things as if you're separate from the source of supply. You start receiving awareness of what already exists in the invisible realm of spirit. The miracles don't come from outside you. They emerge from within as you align with what's already true in consciousness. The hidden truth behind every manifestation, every healing, every breakthrough is this: physical form follows consciousness with absolute consistency. You can't force transformation by manipulating external circumstances. The impact happens when you shift what you're holding internally, and then watch as reality rearranges itself to match that internal shift. Type, "I'm listening now," if you're ready to practice presence instead of petition. Now here's where this gets really interesting, because there's a practice that completely inverts how you've been trained to handle problems. When something difficult appears in your life, whether it's a health crisis, a financial emergency, or a relationship falling apart, your immediate instinct is to fight it. You either physically battle against the circumstances, or you pray desperately for God to remove it. But here's what's happening behind the scenes that you probably don't realize. Every time you fight a problem, every time you focus all your energy on combating it, you're actually declaring that it has power. You're giving it authority over your consciousness. You're affirming it as real and threatening. This is the hidden truth that shifts everything about your approach to challenges. In spiritual reality, in the realm where consciousness is the only actual cause, the problem doesn't exist. It exists only in the realm of appearance, not in the realm of truth. You're not pretending difficulties aren't there or engaging in denial. You're making a profound decision about what you consider to be ultimate reality. The appearance is showing symptoms, circumstances, limitations. But you're recognizing that in pure consciousness, where everything originates, there is only wholeness, abundance, and infinite possibility. This practice requires you to hold two realities simultaneously. Yes, the appearance is here. Yes, the bank account shows zero. Yes, the body is displaying symptoms. Yes, the relationship is fractured. But you refuse to give those appearances the final word about your spiritual identity or the truth of your situation. As you rest in this recognition, as you stop empowering the problem by fighting it or fearing it, something extraordinary begins happening. The circumstances start shifting, not because you forced them through willpower, but because consciousness is reorganizing itself and physical form must follow. What makes this even more powerful is understanding where this transformation actually takes place. Every spiritual problem you've ever experienced, every challenge that's kept you trapped, every limitation that's felt insurmountable, exists only when your mind leaves the present moment. Think about this carefully. Right now, in this exact second, strip away all the mental commentary about what happened yesterday or what might happen tomorrow. Remove the stories about what your problem means, where it came from, how long it's lasted, or how bad it could get. In this pure present moment, where is the actual problem? You're alive right now. You're breathing. You're conscious and aware. Whatever crisis your mind wants to rehearse exists either in past regret or future anxiety, but it doesn't exist in this precise moment of now. Christ consciousness is only accessible in the present because the present is the only place that actually exists. Everything else is mental projection, stories you're telling yourself, fear-based scenarios you're imagining. The journey Jesus was demonstrating wasn't about escaping from life's challenges or pretending difficulties don't exist. It was about discovering where real life happens, which is always and only now. Pain might be present in this moment, physical discomfort might be here, but suffering, the mental anguish that torments you, requires thought about past or future. It requires your mind to leave the now and create elaborate narratives about what everything means. Drop "I choose now" in the comments if this revelation about presence is shifting how you relate to your challenges. Understanding presence leads us to something even more foundational, something that's at the root of every struggle you've ever faced. Every problem, every challenge, every miracle you're desperately seeking stems from one single belief that's been operating in the background of your consciousness your entire life. It's the belief in separation. You believe you're separate from God, separate from the supply you need, separate from the healing you want, separate from other people who seem to have what you lack. This separation consciousness is what Jesus was actually referring to when he talked about sin. Not in the moral sense of wrongdoing that deserves punishment, but in the original meaning of the word, which is missing the mark of truth. The truth is, there's only one divine consciousness appearing as many temporary forms. The person who betrayed you, the situation that hurt you, the circumstances that disappointed you, they're all divine. Consciousness temporarily forgetting itself, exactly as you sometimes forget your true nature. This revelation doesn't excuse harmful behavior or mean you accept abuse. What it does is remove the emotional charge that keeps you imprisoned by past experiences and current circumstances. When you recognize that everything you've been seeking exists right now in consciousnness and you've never actually been separate from it, the entire journey transforms. You're not pursuing abundance, health, or peace as external goals somewhere out there that you have to earn or achieve. You're recognizing they exist in your consciousness this very moment, and your only work is allowing that recognition to become your lived experience. This is where the concept of grace becomes radically different from what religion has taught you. Grace isn't God showing mercy toward undeserving sinners who've groveled convincingly enough. Grace is the automatic flow of divine good that operates the moment you stop trying to manipulate, control, and force outcomes through sheer human effort. Every frantic attempt to make something happen, every sleepless night spent strategizing, every anxious moment trying to figure out how to fix your situation comes from that deep belief in separation. The belief that if you don't hustle and scheme and force things into place, nothing will work out. Living by grace means recognizing that Source is already supplying everything before you even ask. This sounds passive to the achievement-oriented mindset that's been programmed into you, but it's actually the most active spiritual practice possible, because it requires constant vigilance against your ego's compulsive need to take control. Your ego believes that you must do something, must take charge, must ensure survival through constant action and manipulation. But spiritual consciousness is always doing everything. Your work is getting out of the way and allowing grace to operate without your interference. This requires a level of trust that feels impossible until you actually experience it working in your life. It means making decisions from a completely different foundation. Instead of asking, "What can I do to make this happen?" you're asking, "What is consciousness already doing? And how can I align with it?" The impact of this shift is profound because you're no longer exhausting yourself trying to force outcomes. You're resting in the recognition that divine good flows naturally when you stop blocking it with fear-based control. Write, "I trust the flow," if you're ready to release control and allow grace to operate in your life. Now here's something crucial that nobody warns you about, and it's the reason so many people abandon this entire practice right when it's about to break through. When you first start practicing this shift in consciousness, when you move from petition to recognition, from separation to oneness, from control to grace, your circumstances might actually get worse before they improve. This isn't failure. This isn't evidence that you're doing something wrong or that the practice doesn't work. It's the transition revealing everything false in your life so truth can replace it. Think about what happens when you stop maintaining illusions through force and control. Everything not built on spiritual truth begins to dismantle. The relationships held together by manipulation start falling apart. The financial structures built on anxiety and fear-based striving begin to collapse. The health patterns maintained by stress and resistance surface more visibly. Most people hit this point and immediately panic. They abandon the practice and return to begging God to fix the chaos, not understanding that consciousness is actually cleaning house. This transition period tests your commitment to truth over comfort, to spiritual reality over familiar appearances. It's asking whether you're willing to let everything false crumble so something real can emerge. The journey through this phase requires trust that's almost impossible to maintain without understanding what's actually happening behind the scenes. You're not being punished. You're not doing it wrong. You're experiencing the natural consequence of consciousness, shifting from false foundations to true foundations. And the old structures can't remain standing when the internal support system changes. Some people practice faithfully for months and watch their entire life seem to disintegrate. Marriages hit crisis point. Businesses start failing. Health declines. Every area that was held together by the old consciousness begins revealing its instability. The temptation to quit, to return to what's familiar even if it wasn't working, becomes overwhelming. But this is precisely where the real transformation begins to take root. Everything that needs to fall apart is being given permission to fall apart so you can rebuild from truth instead of continuing to build on false foundations. As you persist through this transition, as you refuse to abandon recognition even when appearances suggest total collapse, you begin moving towards something profound. You start becoming transparent to divine consciousness. This isn't about achieving some special spiritual status or becoming holier than other people. It's about becoming so established in Christ consciousness, so clear of personal agenda and ego-driven motivation, that divine consciousness can operate through you without obstruction. This is the same state Jesus demonstrated, and it's not reserved for ancient prophets or specially chosen people. It's available to you through persistent recognition of what's already true. You don't achieve transparency through effort or technique. You achieve it by continuously releasing everything false until only truth remains. And that process happens naturally as you practice presence consistently, day after day, choosing recognition over petition, choosing truth over comfortable illusions, choosing to trust the process even when everything seems to be falling apart. Type, "I'm staying faithful," if you're committing to this journey, even through the transition period. If you're still here with me, you've just taken a journey that most people will never experience because they're too comfortable staying inside the familiar cage of traditional religious thinking. What we've explored today isn't just information that sits in your mind and fades away by tomorrow. This is transformation waiting to happen in your life the moment you begin practicing what you now understand. This channel exists to bring you these hidden truths that have been buried under centuries of institutional control, to give you practical spiritual insights that actually work when you apply them. If this resonates with you, if you want to continue exploring the revelations that change everything about how you experience reality, go ahead and subscribe. There's so much more to uncover together, and I'm committed to bringing you content that shifts consciousness, not just fills time. Drop a comment right now saying, "This message was meant for me," so I know you made it all the way through. I read every single comment, and there's something powerful about declaring your commitment to this path publicly. It anchors the decision in your consciousness and lets me know these teachings are landing where they need to land. And if this video opened doors in your awareness that have been locked for years, hit that like button. It helps this message reach others who are ready for it, people who are tired of begging and ready to start recognizing. Individuals who sense there's something deeper than what religion has been teaching them. There's a video right here that goes even deeper into dissolving the blocks that keep you from experiencing what Jesus actually demonstrated. It picks up right where we're leaving off and shows you the practical steps for living from Christ. Consciousness instead of just understanding it intellectually. Click and continue with me over there, because what you've learned today is just the beginning of understanding how spiritual reality actually operates in your life.